Karen, Dale, what's
Next is Bill Garrison with Parks and Recreation. Hi, Bill.
Hello, everyone.
I'm going to pull up the budget on this screen. Bill, actually, I'm going to change it up again, and we're going to start with revenues for you.
Okay.
Dale, the one you sent me earlier, can you enlarge the screen? Because I can't do it on my end, and I keep having to lean. I have two screens up here. Keep having to lean forward. I can't. If I enlarge it on my end, it gets blurry.
Let's see what I can do.
See, you've got your thing within a, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, did that work?
Yep, if you could do that, click that one more time, it would be even better, at least on my end.
All right,
Okay.
how's that?
There we are.
All right.
Thank
yeah,
you.
No problem. Sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay, so the revenues are going to be on two different sheets because I have them coded to two different class IDs for Parks and Recreation. This sheet is just going to be rental revenue for the Parks and Rec Department. We're holding that at 6,000 as it was in 2020. We flow over to the next sheet. We have our Park and Recreation charges. Bill, do you want to speak to the revenues?
Sure. So we're looking for the Parks and Recreation charges. Those are the membership fees. And we didn't get a lot of those because we gave credit for people for the time that we were closed. So we do expect that a lot of those will come due next year. So that's why we are keeping that at the annual rate of $36,000. Tennis fees. Look at, you know, 45,000.
That should go up, shouldn't it? Why would you
camp,
go to the anticipated actual rather than to what you had in the past?
It's the 3,000 for 2020. We've received 3,077 to date, and we're at 3,000 for the 2021 budget.
Why? Why wouldn't you do 2021 that you would get fees the same way you got at 2019 or in 2020, 2018?
But the top line here is what was budgeted, and the bottom line here is what was actually received.
Right.
So we received in 2017, 4,390. In 2018, 3,210. In 2019, we received 2,724. And then to date, we've received $3,077 in revenue.
Right, so you understand that under COVID, you actually received more than, I think you're budgeting way too conservatively. And I think that Bill should be figuring out why from 17 to 20, it went down by 50%. Either people are not paying, which I suspect is what's happening, and we need to figure that out, or people are not interested. I think it's the former because I passed by those courts and people are using it. So somehow people are simply not paying, we're letting it slide. I think you need to figure that out, but you're really overly conservative on the fees. You should have a better reach number than the lowest possible number. And I know it's not a lot of money and we should move on. Nevertheless, I disagree with sort of what's being done here. It should be about 6,000 and the job is here to figure out how to get there. I mean, under COVID, you made more money.
I mean,
What you
I think it's $75 for a family membership for a year, because I got one for my family, and tennis was great during COVID because it was outdoors and you can do all of the reserving online. And they were quite popular. But did something change from 2017 to 2018? or maybe even 2016, because was there a change in usage or a change in rates or a change in organization? I mean, when did Shannon Ross pass away? When did the USTA maybe become less engaged? Were we getting fees from the USTA because they were doing tournaments here that's no longer happening? Is that what was with the change? Because that is a precipitous drop. But $75 a household is only going to add up to so much.
Right. I can look on
Right.
our end to see. Bill, I don't know how much history you have that came over from ActiveNet.
Okay. All right. It's not a big
Yeah,
dollar.
I don't, we'd have to look back into the ActiveNet.
Right. Yep. Okay.
Thanks.
Do you remember us talking about issues with enforcing tennis, making sure that people were signing up? I believe it was like earlier this year, maybe even last year this time. Bill, weren't there some measures put in place to get a tighter grip on that? Or am I imagining?
We did. We had the, no, we did. We had the park ranger going over and asking people for their memberships. We had given him a list of all the members. When people didn't have their members, they were told that they needed to get one. So they would come over to Recreation or go online and get them. So we did do that. It's just, it's not monitored, every open hour that
Bill, there's something with
Can everybody hear me okay? 'Cause
you're really garbled.
yeah.
You're on and off garbly. Not to belabor the text anymore, but courts are lovely, but I've never once gone and found the gate locked. I have no recollection of what the code is. I was told it when I became a member, but I've never had to use it.
I think he's frozen.
Is he in the community center or is he from home?
Community center.
Okay. We will wait for
All
Bill.
right, so you're gonna revisit. The numbers seem a little funky and or it's not being as monitored as it should be, and therefore people have learned not to pay appropriately or etc. Something needs to be done here.
Something changed. That's not just, it doesn't drop by more than half just because we're not monitoring carefully. Because I doubt
Yeah.
that we had differently 5 years ago. I think it's just being utilized differently. And so there's a revenue. And there did used to be USDA tournaments, and maybe that used to be included in that line, and I don't know that we have them anymore. All right.
Right.
Dale, while Bill is figuring out his technology, he knows what's in here.
Hey,
Oh, there he is.
how's that?
There's two Bills.
Bills. There's a still Bill, and there's a glitchy Bill.
Okay, so we will research
I know.
the tennis.
Disappeared.
No, still glitchy.
All right. I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna go on my phone, which I know has worked well in the past.
Okay. All right, Dale, why don't you walk us through some of these numbers while Bill's getting back on.
Okay, the next up is day camp fees. Bill did increase it. He's proposing a rate increase that he can get into when he gets back online. The offset with this is, as we know with COVID this year, while our revenues did not materialize, we also did not have the matching expense of running a day camp. So for the 2021 budget, we kept it the same way, because if it does not occur, it's not going to have a negative impact for items that have to be covered another way. Children's recreation, we left at 40,000.
Can I ask a question, Dale? The trip fees since 2017 seems to be zero. $4.64. So what's that about, and why do we even have it here?
The original thought way back when they instituted trip fees was to separate it out, but it never actually truly occurred and ended up just being absorbed within
Okay.
the day camp itself. This will fall off eventually, but because there's a value here, it keeps getting brought forward.
Oh, got it. Okay, so eventually we
yes.
won't be seeing this.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So children's recreation, we're leaving at the 40,000. We are at 35,317.25 to date, which is excellent. Adult recreation, we did lower from 55,000 to 32,000 for 2021. As you can see, for the year-to-date number, we have 5,452 and 60 cents in revenues for adult recreation. Part of this reduction was also because we lost one of the classes, is my understanding. Bill, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, that's correct. We had one of our independent contractors who left and went to work for another location. So we did not figure that revenue into this. However, given COVID, he lost that other location, so he may be coming back. So actually might help us achieve our revenue goals there.
Great. The next one.
But I don't know if you want to do it now. Are you going to talk about the proposed increase in camp fees with fees, or do you want to talk about it when we talk about camp fees and the revenue? You were transitioning when
Right.
Bill mentioned it.
Sorry, Bill, do you want to speak about your the day camp fees?
So this is the day camp fees. The day camp costs are always going to go up because of minimum wage. And that's the majority of our expenditures for camp is the salaries. So it's looked at here. In 2019, we did well with our revenue. We brought in $290,000. So we can look at our anticipated for 21 of 283,750, and as long as we have the same enrollment that we had in 2019, we can make that by keeping the fees the same as they are. If we don't hit that number and we look for like a 5% increase of the rates, then we would be able to have that anticipated number that we always budget for. We just had a particularly good year in 2019 with that enrollment. But if we don't make that number, we might want to think about doing the 5% increase in the fees. So that is something I know the last 2 years that I've spoken to the board at budget time, there's been some great discussion about that, if we should be continuing to raise fees or keeping those fees the same. So looking for direction from the board on that, how we should proceed with that.
Thanks, Bill. So on my end, obviously, you're right. 2019 seems to have been a good year, not just for that one, but pretty much for all the other programs. Sure, except for the children recreation, that went down in 2019. But everything else seems to be like higher than what it was budgeted. To me, right now, and this goes across the board in relationship to fees. To any of the programs from the development department to the planning department to maybe some of the stuff on the clerk's office, I'm not looking, and especially I'm not looking to increase any fees. Me personally, I'm not. I don't think it will be fair for the community that still have not found a job to actually to be able to try to do something in a community center, and we're going to hit them with an additional increase on their fees when they're still struggling with paying their bills. That being said, so that goes back to the day camp fees. Obviously, I will feel more comfortable if we were to go back to what it was budget on 2000, even 2020, 2019 portion about that. I think we're hitting too high, aiming too high for this 283 budget.
But Manny, if Bill just said minimum wage is going to go up, expenses and human resource in every place in the Northeast is a big chunk of your expenses. What are you going to say about expenses? If you don't increase revenues, but your expenses have a natural increase by law, whatever, what is our policy about increases? Either paying more for staff or paying more for product. You can't have that increase and not increase revenue. They work together. Otherwise, you're in a bad place as an organization, as a municipality. So are you suggesting that we also either decrease overhead expenses or at least stay stable to some, across all of these things is what I'm hearing you talk say.
We always have to, obviously we have to find ways, creative ways to do this, sure. I don't think, I'm telling you, I just don't feel that, to me, an increase on fees, so percentage wise, Bill, what is the percentage, right now that you're thinking of increase on? Just give me an example right now, the day camp fees. What is the actual fee right now, and what is the future fee that you're proposing?
So, for example, like the grades 1 through 4 camp, it's $600 a week. So we're looking to do a 5% increase, and that 5% does not cover the cost, the actual cost of the increase in minimum wage.
So it's a $30 a week more that you're thinking of doing this.
Right. And
refresh my memory, when was the last time we increased the fees 5%?
We did it 2 years ago.
And Del, when was the last time before that? 2 years before that?
I will look that up.
I just want to insert here fees across the board. It is really important that we maintain quality of affordable services for our community. Looking at the whole pie of how the village accesses revenue, whatever is not coming through through property taxes is we're offsetting property taxes with fees. So it is a careful balance, because we are trying to keep the tax rate low as well. So I think it really involves some thoughtful discussion on balancing the programs that we offer in a way that's also responsible to taxpayers overall, not just the people who are accessing the programs. And that in that regard, fees unilaterally, we can look at a little bit differently too, based on need in the community. So where you have broad needs at the community center, if you're talking about planning and building and people taking permits out, that's really a different type of scenario. So it's another way to look at fees. We do typically offer programs below what our costs are, because we are sensitive to being able to provide the community, but it's that money's still coming from the whole pie. So it's really a careful consideration as we go forward in making sure that we're always trying to strike the right balance there.
I understand that. So, just keep in mind, we are, obviously, we just created a youth center, which also is going to be part of the community center as well. And my hope is to actually see some progress on the community center and for redesign, I guess, repurpose some of the stuff in there. So my next question is going to be, if we were to start working and we're doing a lot of the spaces on the community center, what is the alternate plan for all these after school programs, all this stuff that happens during the year and the community center? If we start working in a capital project that will impact the, some areas in the community center, is that something that you guys have talked about? You know, what is the alternate locations that you guys may be using, and what does that look like? Besides the fees, that's you know, obviously to me a concern as well. What is the plan that you guys have established for something like this? And you don't have to answer this now. I mean, that's just
Yeah,
as I'm
I think
looking
it
through
may
this.
be without, you know, as you know, we're just really looking, we haven't even gotten drawings or thought about how, you know, how we're going to, you know, how significant these changes are. So it's a little bit premature for us to understand that, but I think the idea is looking at again, making sure that we can phase and balance things. But to your point, as we do this, it also opens up other opportunities for new programming too, and additional programming, which can help offset as well. The biggest challenge that we have right now in planning anything is not knowing the course of the pandemic. Anticipating we will not be able to run the programs we typically run over the winter and possibly the spring, and you know, really not knowing where that is. So it is a little bit of a more challenging time to plan, but that also affords us some time to make improvements so that as we're looking forward, we can look towards when we are at full operations, ways that we can maximize community benefit and revenue to make sure that we can sustain that.
You, in a way, you sort of answered my question. So if we still have a lot of unknowns on what is going to happen next year in regards to all this stuff that you just mentioned, that, you know, we don't have, we're not going to be running any programs in the winter, and we definitely don't even know what's going to happen in the spring. So to me, again, and even though it's only a 5%, I still don't feel that we should be doing that. But again, I'm only 1 of 5. So I'm sure my other colleagues have other, you know, other opinions or other thoughts about that. So that's my 2 cents on this. I don't agree with increasing the fees.
I hear what you're saying, and it does sound really nice to be able to tell families in Austin that we're not increasing any of our rec fees in this upcoming budget. That's a message that would be really welcome by a lot of families who are able to take advantage of it. The thing is with this year, obviously we didn't anticipate 2020 being the shutdown year that it was, but I think I think this budget is, you know, maybe a nice idea, but it's not gonna materialize like this. I mean, the whole world's not gonna be vaccinated by next summer. So like I think the good news from a budgeting dependability standpoint is that when, as was pointed out, we identify whether it's, you know, $280,000 of revenue, the expenses that are associated with it are almost as high. Like we make it's very little net revenue because it's not designed as much of a profit center. It's designed as a service for our community. I mean, the government is a service for our, you know, fairly high needs community. What is the proportion for day camp in particular? I know is probably one of the lost leaders as far as programs in the day camp through the rec department. Do we know what it is as far as, you know, if one kid costs, you know, pays $600 a week, how much of that is actually comes out of our expense line?
Let me see.
Explain it in whatever way it makes sense to you. You don't have to use that analysis.
350,000 divided by 5. 15. So we would, if we charged, if you take that number, I think we're budgeted for 350,000 for the camp, and we have about 500 kids. So the math on that is $700 per kid is what we would need to charge to break even. So I don't know if it may be a little different way of looking at it than you were
That's
trying to
helpful.
get.
That's actually we make more money off of it, or we offset more of it than I actually realized. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, if the camp doesn't happen,
Then those expenses don't happen.
right.
Right.
Okay.
But I think, as a piggyback on this, so, because we still don't know a lot of the unknowns of next year, and I'm talking about just in general, looking at this number, sure. Shouldn't that reflect the unknown part and not the expected part? Don't we have to be more realistic in a way? We weren't expecting to have, the revenues that we are having on the sales taxes, which is great. But, we know that the fees have gone down in a lot of the programs. So I think, $283,000 for the summer camp, it may most likely is not realistic. We just put in that number to make the budget work. And I don't want to do that. I want to be, in a way, realistic in what these numbers are.
Well, but that's the point that I'm trying to make, man. So if we put 283,000 revenue, the expense associated with it is going to be, 195,000 or whatever it is. Like it's, and then the actual net revenue that we won't be getting that we might have anticipated is relatively small. It's only going to be like a fifth of that or a sixth of that.
The camp budget, which we'll get to when we do the expenses though, the total budget for that department is $366,450. Now up on the screen, Manuel, that's what you were looking for when the last time we raised the rates. Is it? Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So for pre-K to 6, for 6 weeks, it stayed at 485. It seems since 2014. Since kindergarten was raised last prior to 2019 and 2014. Same with Rider. Veterans was increased in 19. Previous to that, it was increased in 17. And then prior to that, 2014.
That's went up significantly when they added a weekly trip, which is very much appreciated by those older kids. But so the way it works though is if the camp doesn't happen, we actually save money.
Right.
Correct.
Because we don't lose as much.
Right. Do we want to stay on fees while we're here or go back and forth? Because Bill, you had a couple of other items, it looks like. Or that was the only one?
That was the only one. Yeah.
Okay, great. This schedule is in your budget binders though, as well.
Thank you, Bill.
Sure. I'm going to switch back to the other screen. Hang on.
Yeah, when does the minimum wage go up? Is it this year?
January 1st. So it'll be $14 an hour.
And what was it this year?
13. And then it'll go up again in 2022 to 15.
Right. I just didn't know when it happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are back on revenues and case in point with our after school program recreation revenues. We did reduce them to reflect through the first half of 2021 a reduction in attendance and ability to run the program.
Because of the pandemic?
Yes,
Okay, so
Because
it would
this-
seem to me,
because this is revenue that actually exceeds our expenditures. So we don't want to be caught short.
So that's with the after-school program. We did start the after-school program up here in the fall, and we've got very little enrollment. I think, and from talking to people, it just seems that families have, with the school schedules being so sporadic with the hybrid schedules, that families have found alternatives and don't really require that after-school care for their children. So we really think that the only way we're going to get that back is once school goes back to regular, and hopefully that would be by September.
so did you, Dale, use the same discounting number across every single line item to account for the pandemic, or did you pick and choose different numbers for different lines?
Well, we kind of looked at the program and came up with what we thought would be the best thing. For example, like the swim lessons. We did start doing the swim lessons, and we are getting enrollment. However, we're running those swim lessons at 50% capacity. So right off the bat, we're going to be at 50% revenue if we even get to the level of swim lessons we were doing prior to COVID. So that was kind of the estimate that we made, depending on the program.
Okay.
And some programs have a direct relation to the expenditure for the instructors. So those we did not adjust.
All right, on this worksheet, when you do the budget, do you have another column available to you to make notes or not? In other words, when I do my budgets, I reduced everything. And I put them in a notes section after every line. I do exactly the same thing you do. And I just put down, because a year from now, nobody's going to remember all this. And they're not going to go back to this wonderful recording to remember that. And because you didn't use a standard number and the same number, you went line by line and sort of said, this is what I think will happen. And you might be 100% right, but it doesn't actually reflect that here at all. And next year, when we sit around and do this, we're going to say, oh, wait, what did they take off here? What did they do? So really, you need a column to the right here that says COVID-19, and underneath it say 25% reduction, 50% because it depends on the school, you know, and we're basically writing off until September, you know, we're not going to have. You know, you could have also said that even the programs that work, we should assume that at some point we're going to shut down for at least 2-week quarantine because somebody will come out, either a staff member or sitting in school. It's hard, like I've said this before when I look at budgets. So the budget pages are supposed to tell a story. And this, the only story we get is if you, Dale, sit with these budgets or the village manager and explains them, rather than being able to read and say, okay, the reduction isn't caused because of demand or supply. The reduction is a 25% reduction due to COVID-19. And I do think it's important for the conversation we've already had, which is we should be accounting for the negative effect that the pandemic is having on the municipalities. Even in our planning the budget, doesn't actually, because you did it line by line. Had you just said, I'm reducing everything by 50%, that would have been a footnote. And every number we looked at, we'd say, okay, it's reduced by 50%, right? So that's
Right.
sort of missing for me. And I
Right.
think it doesn't do justice. 2-3 years from now, we're gonna have to have somebody like Victoria or Rika or Dale or Karen sit there and go, oh, remember, that's when, just like we did with tennis. Oh, that must be when Shannon was no longer with the program. You know, like that's not really, you know, like that's not really what budgets should be doing. They should be telling
In the detail report, I do have a notation that says after school program revenue reduced from January to June enrollment adjusted to 20 attendees.
Yeah, so we do account for that information, even though it's not being shown here. This is there is a detailed history that we can ultimately share, but the budget narrative that goes with this will be cataloged as we go.
Yep, but we can always add more detail as well. Absolutely.
It's just easier. And it's
Right.
easier for people like us and next year and the year after to remember and not have to go into detail.
Right.
It's just another,
Right.
and you didn't use a formula, which is fine. You chose not to. I would have chosen a formula and called it a day. But you didn't. You went line by line, which is a different way of doing it. I don't think
It's
you're going
been
to get
really
a lot
challenging
It's fine.
to-
But I do think you need to add it in.
Yeah, it would have been challenging to use a formula because these really are very specific in terms of how expenses tie to these programs and in terms to how they're being utilized. So it's a little bit different because of the nature of the way we run the community center. We can look at ways. I know that Dale put a tremendous amount of effort into making sure Edmonds replicated the format that we were used to seeing as much as possible. So some of the finer points, like putting in the detail, is going to be part of that process, but it's something we will do going forward.
It's, yeah. I think your 283 number is not a realistic number. And some of the other ones, everything, almost everything you do in the community center, even for seniors, is school dependent. So there is a common thing. And the minimum wage is just a footnote that it's not just minimum wage that goes up. The person who was making $1 more than minimum wage that Bill was paying will now get also another $1, right? It all goes up together. It's a plateau system. It's not just the people who are minimum wage, it's everybody else too. So
Yeah,
again, budgets are supposed to tell a story. They're not just a bunch of numbers that only some people read. It would be nice to add it in. Right, Bill? I mean, you're going to have to give everybody an increase. It's not just the minimum wage.
Yeah, it does impact it. It's
Yeah.
not dollar for dollar, but it does impact it. Yes.
Sure. Okay. So look at these numbers.
Great.
I just have to say it's really interesting what you're learning about the after school program. There were two theories that people will run into the community center, and you people were a part of that, meaning we need tons and tons of space for all the people that are going to come in because they're going to need to. The reality is parents found alternatives, whether they're happy to or not, and aren't using that, actually the after school program as much as we thought they would. So that's interesting to see if that changes or not. And I think you're right that there's not going to be a high demand for it. Okay.
So one revenue line, do you want to speak about the swim team, Bill?
So the swim team is actually one where we're increasing the revenue based upon what we've taken in so far and what our enrollment is. It does seem that people are feeling better about joining programs related to swimming. So we've actually had an increase in enrollment in our Spartans team. So we think that's going to continue. So that's why we're looking to up that revenue for that program.
The specialty swim program.
Can I ask a question about that? Again,
Sure.
What happened from 17 and 18 to 19? I mean, 107, no, I'm sorry, oh, you just budgeted really high, 107, It was 73, 69, 74. It's actually been pretty steady. You
Yeah.
just did half so far this year. It's just that it was budgeted really high, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
I think if you went back to 2016, you'd see it was above the 100,000. And then the question is,
Yeah.
why did it drop from 2016 to 2017?
Right.
But now it's been stabilizing, and I don't know the answer to the drop that took place.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see, the
Yeah, it's the same thing for
specialty
the
swim
next one.
programs,
Everything is budgeted so high and that doesn't come in. It's sort of weird.
right?
Okay.
Right.
All right.
So we lowered specialty swim programs down from 3,000 to 2,000. Adult swim, lower enrollment for that. So we're doing a reduction from 6,000 to 4,000. The youth swim as well. Do you want to speak about the challenges of the swim lessons? Or
Yes, I mentioned that. That's where typically when we do the swim lessons, we have an instructor that we pay, and they would work with 4 kids in that program. So, but because of COVID, we are at 50%. So that instructor is just working with 2 children at a time. So it's just going to cut our revenue by 50%. We do think, so we factored that in for the first 6 months of the year, and then hopefully getting back to the regular up to 4 kids per lesson for the second half of the year.
Pool rentals holding steady. Arts Center program revenue, we kept the same as well because the offsetting expenditures that equalize the revenue. Then we have the IMA with the town, and then state aid for youth programs, and that's our revenue section.
So just tell me the total reduction, because you just moved the numbers. The total reduction in revenue for, just the total reduction in revenue for the department.
It's showing here a 9.96% reduction.
So, but that's also including though the Youth Bureau grant that's in that $20,000.
Can you take that out? That's just 20,000?
That's what we're getting from the Open Door. It's 25,000, but it runs from October through September. So we're going to be using 5,000 in this last quarter.
State and youth programs. Those are grants?
The state aid youth programs, those are some small grants we get from the Westchester County Youth Bureau. Those are there every year. We get those. The one up above that where it says the Open Door Youth Bureau grant, that's the grant that we got from Open Door. It's $25,000 a year. It runs from October 1 to September 30th. We're going to use 5,000 of that now to go through the remaining part of the year. So that's why it's budgeting revenue for 20,000 for the 2021 budget.
So, Bill, the Youth Bureau, is that something that you're going to talk to us about what you're anticipating? Because that's going to be a really different structure, because I know that once you have Youth Bureau, eventually there'll be an opportunity for it to generate its own revenue to offset some of its programs. Is that its own separate thing that we'll just figure out when we get the person who's going to take care of that?
We do have in this budget sheets the Youth Bureau line, so we can look at that and talk about that.
All right, then get to it whenever you want to get to it. I don't know what else you have in here, so I'll let you and Dale figure out what you're going to enlighten.
Okay. So, well, I think we've concluded on the revenue.
Yep, sorry. I was trying to get down to the Youth Bureau for you.
All right. Now, why don't we do expenses?
Yeah, in the expenses. So now we are on to parks.
All right, let me find parks. Okay.
So
So
go ahead, Bill.
parks, yeah. So I can tell you the areas where there's the increase and the reason why. Um, because everything right down is pretty much the same, or we decreased it kind of like with longevity and out of title, $500 here, $500 there, give or take. The real big jump is in the part-time line, which I asked for an increase of $32,000. This is for our seasonal employees that we have, and these employees are people that we hire in the spring, the summer, and the fall that help us with the additional workloads that we have. And what we found is that during those times, even with these additional guys that we have, we don't have enough time to get into doing all the things that we want to be doing, like small little projects, and we just never seem to find the time. So we were asking for an increase there so that we could have more part-time people to work as seasonal employees. So currently we have about 4 part-timers that work 16 weeks, 40 hours a week, and we're looking to increase that. And below that, it was a little bit of an increase as well to the custodial ranger. That is another seasonal position. That person goes around to the parks in the evenings and on weekends to assure that people have permits for ball fields, to remind people that they need their tennis permits. That has typically been about a 20-hour per week position, and we wanted to increase that up to a 40-hour week position so that we'd have more coverage in the parks.
Doesn't that make him a full-time employee?
He'd still be seasonal, so he can work 40 hours for 4 months, and then they can't work again in that calendar year.
Bill, explain to me, like, what projects you say you never guys find the time to do by adding this additional part-time person. Like, what particular project would you like to tackle on this coming year, I guess?
Well, like, one of the things is that if you look in some of the parks, a lot of the chain link fence are old and rusty. We can increase just the aesthetic look of that by painting that. But it takes time, some planning and some time and having some manpower to do that. So we spend a lot, during the summer when we do the flowers, and that takes a full-time guy every day, almost the entire day, just to do the watering of the flowers. So if we can have somebody else that's going to be helping us, we can get to some other things. Also, we wanted to work on the small pavilion area up at Vets Park, where the fireplace is next to the pond. Work on some issues there so we can make that a nicer facility, possibly available for rentals or available for parties that people could use. Bleachers, some of our bleachers are in need of repairs. Cleaning the bleachers, power washing the bleachers. Those are just some of the things that are coming off the top of my head that we'd like to do. And we always seem like we have them identified, and then we struggle to get to them because of the regular workload that we need.
What is your staff number for parks?
We have 7 full-time.
And how many part-times?
No part-time, just in the seasonal, we have the 4 seasonal employees.
And the ranger, by the way, I have never met him. I mean, I know the name. I have never met the ranger at all. I'm not sure.
You just don't realize it.
I know, but I never seen him in the
Yeah.
parks. I never seen him in the
He's
park.
there at weird times because when I've seen him at the parks, it's
Can't
been
hear
like
anybody.
when my kids have played soccer at Upper Vets where we have lights and they're playing like in the outfield of, because that's when he's there. He's in the parks at the weird hours to make sure that people aren't misbehaving.
I'm actually I'm okay with increasing the hours because if whenever the events policy goes through, goes back to my question at that time was enforcement and who's going to be checking this. So to me, the increase and the visibility of the ranger itself, I think I'm hoping it will help to enforce this. Well, at least that's my hope. I know he cannot be everywhere, but at least will be something a tool that we can utilize to have this particular case being more enforceable, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm supportive of having more of the part-time staff. I would love to. I'm especially supportive of getting more projects, just like the handful that you mentioned off the top of your head. We have so many beautiful parks, and they are so well utilized by a wide range of people in the community. So anytime we have an opportunity to preserve and upgrade and beautify the existing resources that we have, I think that's great. And doing it with seasonal staff is a minimal commitment by the village, because we could do it this year. And if we feel like it wasn't the best use of funds or we can't do it next year, then there's no commitment. We don't have a long-term employee that is that we're committed to. So to me, that seems like a good use of funds. I look forward to you being able to tell us about all of the really, point out to us when it's happening that the seasonal workers, just to make us feel good, that they took care of, look at this new plantings that were done at the Sitting Park, or the new bleachers that were put in at Vet, or at Nelson Park. I mean, there's so many little projects like that I know you like to do, and if you had a few more workers and could get more of those done, I think those are also really high profile things that are really well appreciated by a lot of people in the community.
Right.
I can't think of anything that's more well utilized and appreciated in our community than our parks. So investing in them, and also those are usually local people. Those are usually Ossining residents who are often the ones hired for those seasonal jobs, I would imagine, Bill. And that's just another bonus and opportunity.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, the ranger, is he still driving one of the old Chiefs cars?
Driving one of the what?
One of the old retired fire department Chiefs cars, or has he got a vehicle that's actually marked that says Ranger on it? Because Manny brings up a good point as far as ID and being able to ID the ranger.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. What he was using was we used to have a Tahoe. The rec department had an old Tahoe, and that died this year. So we were using a van that the Parks Department got from the police department, and that's what they were using. We do need to figure that out, and I think we're on the same page here. Is going forward is that one of the things I did this summer was I got recreation T-shirts for the ranger. So prior to that, there was he could walk in the park and he would look like anybody else. But we do need to get not a uniform, but some attire that separates him, so people do know that he is an official in the park, and something on the vehicle, whichever vehicle we end up getting, putting it on the vehicle that shows it's the ranger. And we could do that by ordering the magnets that go on the side of the car, where it could, a park ranger or something like that.
No, I agree. It just, visibility is everything. And, I just happen to know him. So he's come to break up a couple of our soirees up at Ryder Park. So, but we know him. And, but the people that don't know him and can't ID him, they don't, like I say, visibility is everything, especially nowadays, especially with all the complaints you're getting about parks. The use they're getting right now. We really need to, make him more visible.
Yep.
I'm done. I'm on the train.
Thanks,
Oh,
Bob.
that is, you're on the train. Okay. All right. So we're coming up on the 1 hour mark. So I know there's still a lot to get to here. So Phil and Dale, what do you want to tell us about next?
The other line that's high in there is the equipment line. And from last year, if you look at the difference is we're looking to fund 2 new pieces of equipment, a new John Deere track mower and an Exmark mower. So 2 new mowers that we are in dire need of. So those were an increase there of $19,800 in that line.
So I don't know that it's not necessarily relevant, but are you going to talk at all about the I felt like we took such a leisurely scroll through the revenue lines, and now we're coming up on the 1 hour mark. But are we going to talk about the in lieu of Parkland Fund? Because I know that we had looked at allocating a lot of that to a lot of the projects that were happening this year.
Mm-hmm. We can go over that. Anyone else has any questions on the expenses for parks?
Yeah, just real quick while Dale brushes through that, you have the same equipment on the capital projects. So you making these as a part of the budget, the budget itself, or is it a capital project?
It's on the capital, but it shows the funding is in the operation budget.
Okay, so are we gonna be thinking about removing that from the capital?
It would go on the bottom generally where there's small equipment. Right now it's up on top, but it would filter down to the bottom. I wanted to leave it there so it was apparent if we wanted those 2 items to be funded potentially from fund balance instead of having it be part of the operating covered by revenues and the tax levy.
Do we have anything on this year budget on the operating part of his budget to make those purchases now?
Right now, he had in a leaf blower that we asked him to purchase this year, as well as Bill's trying to purchase a divider, Bill. Is that correct?
For the gym, yes. A divider curtain.
How much is that going to be, Bill?
About 12 with the electric install, probably 14, 15,000.
Dale, do you know where we are with unexpended 2020 budget funds? I realize we still have a couple of months left to go, and I know at the end of the year we always like to put. Do we plan on putting another $650,000 back into the general fund? I'm just wondering if we didn't put $650,000 back into the general fund and we just expended it in 2020. With what Manny's saying, like, can we go ahead and order that John Deere tractor right now? And anything else?
Right. I'm going to relook at the numbers I had done in September to make sure. At that point, I was saying we were not going to use the 650,000 budgeted and potentially put back 100,000 to fund balance. But I can revisit, yes.
Okay. What else do we know about Parks and Rec?
I can tell with under rec administration, the total number is down. We did have 2 retirements, and those positions are not being refilled. So that's generally the difference there. Nothing else is jumping out as any big changes or asks within the rec areas.
And you have a new hire, and that seems to be going well, right?
Yes, we had the new hire that was budgeted for 2020. Yes.
Good.
The rec supervisor, Veronica Roche. And she's the one, and so with that position has allowed us to open the community center 7 days a week. So she works a Sunday through Thursday position schedule.
Can you tell me why the telephone and internet went up so much?
Where is that? Under recommend? Telephone.
Are you talking about, Rika, you're talking about the previous years. You're not talking about this year. You're talking about 17.
Wait, I can't tell because I'm
Yeah,
on
no.
I'm looking at two things at the same time. I gotta push back my screen.
You know, they'll highlighted those numbers. So those are the numbers from
Yes,
previous.
but, well, you're over here. It's the same.
So and she's right. So what is in Dell or Bill, you know, obviously we had budget 7,815, you know, 15 on 17, I think, and then 15, 20, you know, 12, and then 19, 6, sort of $7,000. But in reality, we have gone almost double that.
Right.
Do we know why? Why is the reason why it went up so high?
Is that one of the ones that gets split out, Dale?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to look for. On there. I'll take a look. It could be that it's not getting split as it was budgeted across the different lines.
Okay.
But I'll take a look at that. I can't do it on, I have to do it on over here.
Thank you, Dale.
Do we want to just look at the youth bureau real quick?
Yes.
All right. Let's see what page of that. Youth bureau.
And Bill, you'll be coming back for our capital meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So youth bureau. So we hope to get a Westchester County Civil Service has all the information that they need. They're reviewing our request for the youth bureau director position. So we hope to be getting that within a couple weeks, and then we'll be able to post that position. We do have the director position budgeted. We have the other full-time position that we were looking to do is budgeted there as well. And then we had it reduced for a start date, not having that person start until September.
Right. And then we added more funding to the part-time.
Part-time, right. So that our thought was, as the youth bureau director gets up and going, it's not like they're jumping into a program that's going to have lots of different activities and things going on. So we might not need that extra full-time person at this point. And when we do run some programs, we could hire part-time people like we did this past summer to run our youth leadership program, and that worked out very well.
Right. So the total budget for the youth program for 2021 is 157,804.
Yeah.
So the part-time person that you're looking at, that's when that person's up and running, they're anticipated to be what, 20 hours a week?
The 15,000 that's in the part-time line, that is for as we need people. So if we're going to run a 6-week program and we need an extra assistant.
Okay. Now I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
So all right. So that's not a clerical admin assistant for the director.
No.
That's just
No.
a program, in program specific hire.
Program staff, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we thinking, when we originally conceived of youth bureau, I think the idea was that it would be a staff of 2. That's no longer the case.
That's what we have budgeted. That would start in September.
The youth director is budgeted for the full year, but then the assistant is budgeted to start in September in this number.
Oh, they're both
They're both in there.
Oh, so if I
That's
look,
another 20.
I look on my breakout here,
Yeah,
mine,
Yeah.
I can find the breakout. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So what is the youth director's salary? Is that the 109?
That's the 90.
it's 90.
90 for the director, and then the balance is, okay. All right, thanks.
Yep.
And none of this accounts for the potential for grants or revenue coming in for the youth bureau. That's not in here because that's TBD, and that's going to take a little time to get up and running, right?
Right. Yeah. We don't know. Like this past year, we didn't know, but we had almost $14,000 for summer youth employment program that we ran. We ran another program that was about $25,000 that we got from the Youth Bureau. So those are all programs that the Youth Bureau was giving us funding for that we had to create the program and get them up and running. We don't know what that's going to be. I was on a call earlier today with the Youth Bureau around the county, and everyone's concerned about the funding and the OCFS funding that's going to be may or may not be coming available.
Okay. All right. This will be a lot of fun for you guys to look at next year. When you have a big
Well, it doesn't seem to be, we need to, when we're done with all these, talk about when we do things and when we don't. A lot of these conversations occurred this year based on grants. Many of our projects are based on promises. Some of them fully, some of them in part. But I don't know if the village can be held to fund everything at 100%. And maybe some things at 100%, maybe some things at half of it. Do more, but only half of them do fewer things at 100%. So I think that's sort of the end conversation when we pull all this together, because looking at it line by line is so siloed that, again, it doesn't really have a nice overall picture of decision. So that, I think, is something to think about.
Before we get off the Youth Bureau, and I'm not looking at it on my computer, so it's a little hard for me to take it all in. Aside from the salaries for the individuals and some, simple, computers and stuff, is there money in there budgeted for programming other than that $15,000?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we heard you. Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm just, I keep getting an unstable message here for some reason. No.
So are there programming expenses baked into this or not yet? And the idea is that the Youth Bureau will not have programming until they get funding to offset the programming. Or
we do have $10,000 under materials and supplies that would go towards programming. And we would also have that $20,000 that we saw in revenue from the open door that would be put for programming as well.
Right, which we already know that we have. That's not something we're shooting for.
Right.
Eventually, the idea is that there would be a lot of really robust programming. Is the expectation that the Youth Bureau programming, because it has an opportunity to get funding from other sources, and that I think a lot of the job of the directors, like a lot of the responsibility is going to be grant writing, right? I mean, isn't that a lot of what we do? And there's different grants you can go after for Youth Bureau funding that you can't go after as a municipality, right?
You're correct. Yes.
Okay, so is the idea that the Youth Bureau, unlike how we operate at a loss for our recreation programming, that because we're not going to be depending on taxpayer dollars for most of the programming expenses, that the Youth Bureau, while it would be paying a couple of salaries, aside from that, the programming is going to be offset.
That's what we discussed, and that would be the goal. Yes.
Okay, thanks. Helpful.
And I want to piggyback on that one, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, on this one. So, Bill, you mentioned that most likely this person is going to be hired by September, correct?
No, the Youth Bureau director, we would hope we would get hired and start in January.
January. Okay.
Yeah. And that just requires us getting approval from the county and then going through our process of posting and recruiting and interviewing and then hiring.
I think that the county is going to be approving that within the week. They have everything we need, and I got a final notice on.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess my question goes to, it will be part of the board, because we still need to we still need to have a board that oversees the youth center, correct? So this whole process, what do you guys, and I know it's a little relevant, and I know we 9 minutes over our time limit, but I think I need to understand this a little bit better, because we should be projecting programming for the Youth Bureau, and obviously for September, if anything, or maybe by the end of the year, or by the middle of the year, we'll have a better idea on what this looks like, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the reason for postponing the second hire to September.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill. I'm glad to know that
Okay.
we'll get to hear more about the capital project at a meeting in the coming meetings.
Right.
You have a lot of exciting things that I know you want to get done with the parks, and kudos to all that you have accomplished in the parks during this time when the world's been upside down, but the parks have certainly had a lot of activity in them. So thanks very much for everything that you all have been doing to keep the parks functioning well and continuing to improve them.
Right. You're welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else with final questions for Bill before we move on to Fernando's next, right? Or is...
No, right now, but yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Bill.
All right.
Thanks, Bill.
All right. Goodbye.
Thank you.